Additional aids and services are available to individuals with disabilities. To make such a request, please contact us by email, by clicking the Help tab in the PD portal, or at pdportal@tamu.edu, by phone, including Relay Texas at 1-800-441-7323, or in writing to Train PD, PD Portal Support, 4477 TAMU, College Station, Texas 77843. Both a transcript and accessible document of the content presented in this webinar can be found as resources in the course description. Click on the blue links under Course Resources in the description. When a link is clicked, a new browser window will open.
Welcome everybody to Check and Tell. I'm Anne-Marie Molinari Sanders with Train PD. I'm joined by Krista Mosher, and I want to give a warm welcome to Katie Welch. Let's go ahead and get started. And today's topic is Make Headlines Using News in Levels. Katie Welch has her PhD, and she's a university instructor, teacher, trainer, and active volunteer in adult education classrooms. Katie teaches international students at UT Arlington English Language Institute and volunteers weekly in community-based ESL and GED program. Ms. Welch currently provides professional development to language teachers through partnerships with the U.S. Department of State, Cambridge University Press, and Literacy Connexus. Katie's innovative classroom ideas have been published in academic journals such as The Language in American Speech, and she presents regularly at national and international conferences, including TESOL, International, COAVE, and the National Center for Families Learning. And at this time, I would like to welcome Katie. Please give her a warm welcome. Here you go, Katie. It's all yours.
Okay, good morning, everyone. So glad that you're here. Thanks, Anne-Marie, for that warm welcome. That's so sweet. I'm glad to be here with you. I'm excited to share with you about a resource called News in Levels. And you've already heard about me, and so we don't need to go over again my background. But the thing I want you to know is that I'm a teacher. In addition to working with teachers and training teachers, I am in the classroom every week trying to solve the same problems that many of you are trying to solve, trying to figure out how to teach my students the best that I can. And recently, I was made aware, probably about a year ago, a little bit more, of this resource, News in Levels. And all of a sudden, I realized, wow, I could use that in so many ways with my students. And so I want to share it with you today so that we can be thinking about how it might work well for your students too. So today, we're going to be doing three things really, in our time together. The first is I just want to talk about the importance of reading the news. Why would we even want to have our students read the news in the first place? Then I want to dive into the resource News in Levels itself, and specifically show you how does it work. What are its best features? There's some features that I really love that I want to share with you. And I want to show you as well the difference between the website and the app. There's a few extra bonus features in the app that I want to talk about. And then I want to end our time together. I can tell, since we have some experienced teachers here, you're already going to be thinking as I'm talking about how you could use this with your students in your context. And I want to brainstorm together how we might use News in Levels in the classroom. So that's our plan for today. Our two objectives are first, that by the end of our session, I can identify the most useful features of the News in Levels website and app, and I can analyze ways to use News in Levels in my own classroom or in classrooms that I support for those of you that train teachers. So that's our plan. So let's go ahead and dive in. We'll just start with the first section, which is about News in Levels. Okay, so as we're doing that, I want to think about your own personal relationship to the news. In my family, the news has been a really important piece of my life. Both of my parents, my mom and my dad, are journalists. That's what they went to school for, and they were both newspaper reporters for many years. And in fact, just a fun fact about me is that both my mom and my dad were nominated for Pulitzer Prizes when they worked for the Houston Chronicle. So they didn't win, but they were nominated, and that's a cool thing. So for me, the news has always been a big part of my life. Every morning I wake up and first thing I do is grab my phone and see what the headlines are. For some of you, you may not feel as enthusiastic about the news as I do, but I've got some phrases here on the screen, 1 through 11, which might describe how you feel about the news. And so I'm curious, which one of these would you say best describes you? Are you a news aficionado? Are you a current event buff? Are you an informed citizen? Are you well read? Or maybe you're kind of towards the end of the list. Maybe you're news averse or an information evader, media shy. Maybe you're both, depending on the day and what's going on in the world. I thought these were cute and kind of give an idea that, we don't all come to the news with the same level of excitement, obviously. Sometimes we can come to the news feeling a little reluctant, but there are so many great benefits of reading the news that we want to talk about, and also some challenges related to it. When we think about our students reading the news, one of the things we have to keep in mind is the readability of news articles. Most news articles that are published in the US today are written at roughly an 11th grade level. I was under the impression that it was more of like a 6th grade level, but in doing the research looking into this, it looks like that's pretty rare. It's actually more around the 11th grade level, and that's actually a big improvement from the mid 1900s when the average readability was much higher. It was like 16th grade. So you had to be college educated to be able to read the news. Now it's at least an 11th grade level. But for so many of our ABE students and our ESL students who are just learning to read in English, that 11th grade vocabulary, 11th grade sentence structures is going to make the news inaccessible for them. And so that's a challenge for us. And it's sad because there are many benefits of reading the news. Now, there are lots of ways to consume news these days. You can get your news on TikTok, on Instagram, cable TV, many ways to consume the news. But specifically reading the news, that is actually reading an article, has some great benefits. And so I'm curious, what would you say is a benefit of reading the news, especially thinking about our students? Learning new words, absolutely.
Exposure to vocabulary that's not in their daily life.
Yeah, there's so many great academic words. Sometimes I talk about tiered words. Tier 2 vocabulary is academic vocabulary. Tier 3 vocabulary is really specific technical vocabulary like science words. And you might not be exposed to those in your everyday life, but you do see those words in the news.
Language development, new vocabulary, sentence structure, language construction.
Yeah, how we put ideas together into a paragraph. So anywhere from the individual words all the way up to sentence structure, all the way up to what we sometimes call discourse structure, which is multiple sentences together, paragraph structure. Absolutely. Love that. Well, I had put a list together. So maybe you thought of some of these, some benefits to reading the news. First of all, it builds skills in reading informational text. One of the things that Anne Marie mentioned is that I teach a GED classroom, a language arts classroom. And what I find is that those students who are getting ready to take the GED often struggle with informational text. And the news is for sure, it's that genre. And so it builds that muscle more so than reading fiction or something else. Exposure to new vocabulary, you all said that. Everyone said that. So you knew that one for sure. Another benefit is that it promotes social consciousness, meaning that we can become aware of social issues because it's not just the language itself, but there's ideas in here. There's content in these news articles, and many of them help us become aware of the world around us, including global awareness. We're going to see today News and Levels helps to build not just awareness of local American culture, but actually awareness of global issues. Another one is just awareness of current events. there's so many things going on in the world that we need to know about because they impact our daily lives. So just becoming aware of what's happening in the world. Another great thing about the news is that not only do we learn about things that have immediate relevance to our lives, but we also learn new things like science. It's not often that our students get to read a lot about science, but the news is a great avenue for that, a good on-ramp to doing science reading, which also opens up the door to science vocabulary and things like that. Also politics, culture, etc. And then you can also get into things like information literacy, learning how to combat misinformation, knowing which source that you found the information from, etc., etc., etc. There are so many benefits of reading the news, and yet we find that our students cannot access these benefits because the news is written at a level beyond where they currently are with language. And so that's where an app or a website like News in Levels comes in. And you are welcome, as I am showing you some things about this resource, to pull up a browser and just do it along with me and explore. There is a website and there is an app. And I'm going to spend most of the time talking about the website, but I also want you to know of a few extra features in the app. But first, let's just stick with the website and start there. When you pull up your browser and you look at News and Levels, probably the first thing you're going to notice is that there are advertisements everywhere. They're all over the page. And who knows what they're going to say too. But the reason why News and Levels has so many ads is because it's free. And so the payoff, the trade-off is that we have all of these advertisements. And so don't let that discourage you or dissuade you from using it. We just have to look past kind of the ads that are on the peripheral of the page and look specifically at the content in the middle. I am going to jump over to newsandlevels.com so that we can look at it together. And I'm going to land on the home page. And so in just a second, I'm going to make that transition. And there's a few things that we're going to notice together. One is I want you to notice the dates on the articles. I want you to notice the type of news, like the content that's there. And I want to show you where the search button is. So here I am. I'm in News and Levels. And one of the things I want you to see at the top is it says World News for Students of English. And so the type of news that we're going to see here is not just US-based articles, it's going to be news from around the world. And so even just scrolling through, this is the landing page for today. We see some US-based news about out of Alabama. But we also, as we go down, see information from Germany, see South Korea, Europe, Israel, etc. So this is definitely has a global focus, and that's intentional because it's for an international audience. And so this is going to help students not only become aware of US culture, but also of what's going on in the world around them. The other thing I want you to notice as we start here is just the dates of the articles. And so this is funny because it says 1/3/2024. And you might think, well, today is March 1st. Well, that's because this is a global news site. And so they are using the day first, so the day, then the month, and then the year. And so 1/3/2024 to our American minds would be January 3rd. But here, because it's using this more international standard where you put the day first and then the month, it's actually March 1st. So this is an article from today, and these are very recent articles. As we scroll down, we'll see this one was also published March 1st. This one is February 29th. That was yesterday, February 29th, February 28th. And so daily, this website is updated with at least one and sometimes two articles per day. So this is very much current events happening around the world and updated frequently. So that was one of the things I want you to see here. And then I want you to see there's a lot going on here on the menu bar. And so up at the top, you'll see the home button, which leads you just back to this home screen, the main page where I am now. And then you'll see level 1, level 2, and level 3. Now, when you just land on this page, you're always going to see the most recent article at the top. So this halloumi cheese article from this morning is as populated at the top. And then as we go down, they get older. But sometimes you may want to be looking for a science-based article or sports. My son, I have a 13-year-old son, and every morning the first thing he does is he wants to know what's the sports news, who has been traded, what stats have happened, etc. And so if you have students interested in certain types of information, it's categorized here, and you see the 3 levels. Now we'll talk in just a minute about what these levels mean, but just notice that for each article, there is a level 1, a level 2, and a level 3. So there's also a bunch of other things here. So you'll see days and book 1 and grammar and book 2. I'm not going to focus today on those extra resources that they have over here. On your own time, you can explore. Every so often, they're coming up with new things. And so they'll have jokes in levels. They have a book in 3 different levels, etc. But I'm really just going to focus on the news articles today. The last thing I want to show you just on the home page before we dive deeper is that there is a search option down here in the lower right-hand corner. And so if you have a student who, like my son, is really interested in football, you can, on the scroll down, it's going to be underneath our ads here on the right-hand side. But as we scroll down, we'll find that search button, and you can search for something like football, and it will populate the different articles that would be related to that. And so we see some different things. And of course, as I do that, all of a sudden I have all my ads, my advertisements popping up. But here in the middle, this middle section is what I'm looking for. And so here's no helmets in American football. Football official kissed a player. And of course, this football is interesting because some of these are talking about American football and some of them are talking about soccer, which is called football in so many other parts of the world. But I did want you to just see that you have a search option there if you ever want to get back to an article that you saw previously. Because it's updated so often, you may need to do a search at some point. This also helps students to self-select their reading. So if you're using this where students are using it more independently, you're not all reading the same article together, but students have a choice, then the search button is great for that. I'm going to click my home button up here in the top left-hand corner to get us back to that home page. And we're back to where we were, and about all of my ads are about to pop up here. Yes, so there they are. So we're back to halloumi cheese at the top. Okay, so this just introduces you to the app. The next thing I want to do is I want to go into a specific article and talk about that. So I'm back here in my PowerPoint for just a second. So we looked at the sample homepage, but now I want to dive into what are these levels? What do we find when we go into a level 1 article versus a level 2 article versus a level 3 article? And so I'm going to search for a level 1 article. And the things I'd like for you to notice are the article content. So what's it about? The fact that there's bolded vocabulary words with definitions, a SoundCloud audio recording, and a reference to a video. And so those are the 4 things I want us to look for as we're looking in a level 1 article. So let me get back over to our website. And I want to look for a specific article about insects, the taste of insects level 1. This is one that I had seen recently and thought was interesting. It is about the fact that in other parts of the world that people eat insects for protein. And when I look here at this level 1 article, again, focusing only on this box and not in all the advertisements around it, I'm going to see that I have a very short news article. Most of these articles, regardless of the level, are probably 3 paragraphs, maybe 4. So they're short, very digestible for students. And you will notice that there are bolded words, worms, disgusting, mealworm, and each one of those is defined at the bottom. So here we see our difficult words. So there's the word worm is defined, the word disgusting is defined, and the word mealworm is defined. Something else to notice is that we have a SoundCloud audio file right here, so that as the student begins to read, they have the option of listening to the audio as they read. And that's a support for them to help them be able to follow along, to listen and read at the same time. And then you'll see right here at the bottom, there's a reference to a video. It says you can watch the original video in the level 3 section. And if we hop over to that level 3 section, if I click on level 3, you'll see that down below, there's an actual video here that you can play for students and get them talking about the content, get them listening. Because again, a lot of students, especially those who are learning English or who are developing their literacy, they likely get their news from somewhere, and more than likely it's something oral. That is, they listen to the news, they watch the news on TV. And so by starting with the video, they can start a conversation, build some background knowledge about the content before they then go into their level 1 article, read it, and read it with support, the support being the audio so they can hear it being read to them, and the difficult words being defined for them here. So you can see there's a lot of support. And the SoundCloud audio, it's available for all 3 levels. So regardless of whether you click in level 1, level 2, you'll see the SoundCloud that would be read the level 2 article, or level 3. So that gives you just a basic idea of what an article looks like, a typical article, especially a level 1 one. But I want to talk now about what do these levels mean? You know, what's the difference between these levels? And so I'm looking for a couple of volunteers. I have selected a level 1 article about why school buses are yellow. And I have both the level 1 and the level 2 here so we can see the difference. So Gloria, we'll let you read level 1 starting with 480,000, and then we'll hear Lisa starting at the bottom with overtime.
480,000 school buses are in the U.S. They take children to school every day. Most of them are yellow. In 1939, a university professor meets with teachers, engineers, and other experts. They discuss school buses to make them safer.
Over time, most school buses in the U.S. became the same yellow color. In the past, many children walked or used horses to go to school. Later, red, white, and blue buses took children to support patriotism.
So what do you notice is something that's happening in the level 1 versus the level 2? What do you notice in terms of vocabulary, grammar, just anything?
Sentence structure was very simple. They were short, simple sentences. The vocabulary was a lot lower level.
Yeah, higher frequency words that students are more likely to know. So as an example, the word patriotism showed up in the level 2, but not in the level 1, because patriotism would be a more advanced word. That's great. Absolutely. The sentences are shorter. And so look at the sentence, they take children to school every day. A nice short sentence. Most of them are yellow. Very simple sentence. Whereas you notice in the level 2, we're starting to add like some modifiers and some like over time, in the past, later. And so the sentence structure is getting a little bit more complex in level 2. Also, what do you notice about the verbs in level 1 versus level 2? So we've got are, take, are, meets. This one's so interesting. In 1939, a university professor meets with teachers. Why meets? You would think it would be met, right? Met with teachers. Why do you think it's meets here?
I think because it's a word they understand.
Yeah,
Because it's in present tense.
it's in present tense. Yeah, absolutely. The level 1 articles are written almost entirely in present tense because that's the tense that most beginning level students are working on. They don't know complex tenses. They may not have learned even the simple past yet. They may still be working on that. And so it was the same information, but you notice that many children used horses to go to school, which is a past tense, used, walked, past tense, became is an irregular past tense, as opposed to these present tense verbs that are here in level 1. A lot of what you'll see is that level 1 is equivalent to what we would consider a beginning English language learner. And so it's going to use very simple sentence structure, present tense verbs, and what we call high frequency vocabulary, meaning vocabulary that they're likely to encounter out in their daily lives. Anything that's not high frequency is likely to be bolded and defined for them. Level 2 is what they're going to call this intermediate. And I'll show you in a second what they mean by that. But in the intermediate, we're going to see, a more complex sentence structure, not super complex at all, but just adding in complexity. We're going to see the addition of past tense verbs. And then we're going to start seeing some of that, what I call sometimes tier 2 vocabulary, which is not the everyday vocabulary, but more specific words that they may not encounter all the time. And we're going to have things that they wouldn't know be bolded and defined. And then the level 3 is supposed to be akin to or similar to reading an actual news story. So it's not highly modified. And so it's going to use typical sentence structure that you would see in the news. Although I will say, I do think it's a little bit easier than, picking up the New York Times, for example. Now you might be thinking, okay, well, how do I know which level to use? And it's important to keep in mind that this resource wasn't necessarily designed for classrooms. It was designed for English learners to use it independently. That doesn't mean that you can't use it in classrooms. There's a million ways we can use this in our classrooms effectively. But just keep in mind that when they're giving instructions on how do I know which level, they're assuming that you, the English learner, are trying to figure out your own level as opposed to having a teacher helping level you. And so they're going to have a test on the homepage, I'll show you in just a second, that gives the student a bunch of words. And you do the test and it will tell you kind of where you are. And so the test might look something like this. It's just going to have a bunch of words, and the student goes through and they mark the words that they definitely know. Not just, that looks familiar, but yes, I know the word house. I know the word boy. I know the word good. And then based on their results, it will estimate about how many words you might know in English at that time. And then it will tell you kind of where you are. And it's saying, do you know anywhere between 1 word and 5,000 words? And they're using 5,000 as the kind of advanced benchmark and 1 to 1,000 as the beginner. Now, there's a lot of research studies about how many words should a beginner student know, how many words should an intermediate student know. And not all of the research agrees with each other. So they're basing this off of one study. But this is just a guide to help students find where they should be. As a teacher, and knowing which level you're teaching, you probably already can look and see which level might be appropriate for your different students. But I do want to show you real quick where that test is located. So let me show you and show you up here at the top of the screen where I said there's the home button, there's level 1, level 2, level 3. And then I'm skipping all of these. You're welcome to explore these, but over here at the very end, there's test. And that's where you can access that test that shows how many words do you know well. So if you would like your students to take that test, you're welcome to. Although I have found that usually, because I know which level of learner I'm working with, we don't necessarily have to do this step. Also, I want to answer Anne-Marie's question, which is, can we hear the article audio? Which is absolutely. So here's the Taste of Insects, level 1, and here's the sound cloud down here at the bottom. Every article, level 1, 2, or 3, will have a sound cloud. And so this is the level 1 sound cloud. And when I click on that, we should be able to hear it.
Insects are very small animals. They can be spiders, bugs, or worms. In many parts of the world, people eat insects. It is a normal food for them to eat insects.
And so forth and so on. So you can hear the audio there. And you can imagine, for those who are learning to read or learning to read in English, either scenario, this is a scaffold, a support that can help them as they're reading, hear the words as they're seeing the words on the page. Okay, so I've been talking quite a while, so I'm going to stop for a second and ask, what questions do you have for me so far? Lorraine asked us, are all of the articles written specifically for the website, or do they ever share articles from other sources? Yeah, that's a great question, Lorraine. And my understanding is that this is a team who is taking news and is adapting it for this website, but they're not necessarily like bringing in a New York Times article or bringing in a Washington Post article. Instead, I believe it is kind of internal, specific for the website. However, a lot of times what they're doing is they're taking some video, some news source that was in an oral format and making it into a written format that English learners would be able to understand. So it is coming from an external source, but usually the external source, instead of being a newspaper, it's some sort of a video. Lisa wanted to know, should students test before they begin using this site or app? If they're going to be using it independently, then it's not a bad idea to go ahead and test, so that way they can see where they are. However, what I have found is that it can be very helpful for students to go ahead and read the level 1 article, even if it's too easy for them, because that builds confidence. Make sure they understand what it says and then read the level 2. And then if they understand the level 2, then they can go on and read the level 3. So they don't necessarily have to test, but it's certainly an option and would help them to know where to start with the resource. But there's actually a lot of value to them. Instead of just choosing, I'm a level 2 and I'm only going to read a level 2, there's a lot of value for students to actually read level 1, even if they are a level 2, because it helps build that background information, so that way then they're ready and can understand level 2 better. So there's a couple of different ways that you can use it with students, but if you're going to use this as not an in-class thing and you're going to ask them to log into this website or this app on their own, then the test can be a good place to start, so that way they're not just confused as to what am I supposed to do with this, what level am I supposed to be at, etc. I want you to be able to see a sample level 3 article, and just there's a couple more things to notice there. One of the things to notice is the video that they can watch, and the other thing is to notice the comment section. One of the things that the authors of this website had in mind is they didn't want to just focus on reading. They wanted to focus on the other language domains as well: writing, listening, speaking. And so you'll see that the video provides an opportunity for listening. And then there's a comment section, which provides an opportunity for writing. So I'm going to hop back over into the website again, and I'm going to click the home button because I want to just get back to where I started. And I wanted to try to find this one on bees. It was interesting. And so I'm going to, actually, it's right here. It was yesterday's article. So I'll go ahead and click on collecting bee venom level 3. And what I'm going to see is the same thing I see in the level 1 and the level 2, but notice the level of complexity has increased. Bee venom is important as people use it to make medicines and research dementia. However, traditional methods, you see the word pesticide, diseases, habitat loss. So a lot more of that, what I consider tier 3 vocabulary, that really specific scientific vocabulary, is coming in this level 3. And then we see the things that we normally see, which is that SoundCloud recording. But as I scroll down on that level 3, I see an actual video here. This is what they've used as kind of the starting point for creating these different articles about bees. So this is an opportunity for listening. And again, anytime you're playing a YouTube video in class, you can always go in and adjust the settings, and you can speed it up or slow it down for learners, especially for English learners that are listening to it for the first time. Slowing it down to 0.75 can help them understand the video better. You can turn on the subtitles so they can read along with the video. But this is a great starter to get students talking about the content. So both listening and potentially speaking. And then below that, you're going to see a question, which is intended to get students writing about the topic. So this question is, what methods has an Australian researcher discovered to safely collect bee venom without harming bees? And so students can add their comment here. Now, as with most comment sections of news articles, sometimes the comments are a little strange, but there is a question provided, and the intention is for students to be able to type their answer or write the answer to this question. So that way they're not just reading the article, they're responding to it in a written way. And the video is there to make sure that they are listening as well. So we're trying to integrate all of these language domains at the same time. And so that leads me to another question. I mentioned how we could incorporate listening to the video. I mentioned how we could incorporate writing by the comments section. Of course, we're reading because this is a reading written resource. But can you think of a way to integrate speaking practice into this experience? Yeah, Anne-Marie was saying maybe round robin reading or reader's theater of the articles. Absolutely. You could have the students read the articles out loud, sharing and explaining the article to fellow students. Oh, so maybe not everyone reads their own article, and they could then read the article and maybe explain what they read to someone else. Or maybe they did read the same article and they just turn and talk to each other about what they just read. Yeah, paraphrase it. Read the article as homework and do the discussion in class. Good answers. Yeah. I love it. Okay, the last thing I want to talk about is what's in the app. So far I've shown you what's in the website, but the app has some additional tools that can also really help students to be able to do this independently, as you mentioned, maybe for homework. And so if you're going to go look for the app, whether you're on Android or Apple, you're looking for this same icon right here. The app is going to be very similar. I mean, it's basically the same thing, but there's just a couple of things that I want to show you that are available in the app that are not available in the website. The first one is that there are multiple choice questions, and the second one is there's an option to translate into the native language. Now, just as like we had in the website, in the app, you're going to have the option to click on the different levels. And when you click on original, it's going to take you to that video. So the level 1 is here, and then you can click on the play button, and that's going to help you to be able to listen to the article. So all of that's the same. But the thing that's different is that red quiz questions right there. When you click on quiz questions,
12
give
years.
you 3 quiz questions that you can look at here. And so the students can read the question. And so the quiz questions are going to be comprehension questions. Did they understand the article? So that's a great addition in the app. The other one is the ability to translate into the home language. And so I'm going to play here and let you see. I'm going to click on the blue translate. Actually, real quick, I'm going to answer a question wrong. So here's me answering a quiz question wrong, and it turns green when it's right. So that's nice. But then I want to show you the translate option. And the translate option, you can go in and select your home language. And it will translate the article into, this is Arabic, for example. And then you can have
Parents in the United Arab Emirates, US, and the UK can use a special app.
It will read it to you both in English and in your native language. And so again, for students who are just starting out and may need that native language support, they can hear the content in their native language and then go read the article in English using the different supports available, like the English SoundCloud, etc. So these are just different scaffolds or on-ramps to get students to be able to understand what they're reading. So I think those are some really neat features, and I encourage you to look at the app. We're getting close to the end of our time, and I have one more really important question that I want to ask you. But I want you to think about, in your classroom or the classrooms that you support, how can you envision using this resource? It was intended as a resource for students to kind of use on their own, but there's so many different ways. When you have these articles available in 3 different levels, it opens up opportunities for classroom activities. And so I'm curious, how do you envision using it in your classroom with teachers that you work with? Gloria kicked us off already by saying, They could defend a point in the article. Lorraine was saying small groups. Students could select an article, present the information to the class, be prepared to take questions, initiate a discussion. Absolutely. I love that. The students select. Gloria said, likes it as a class starter. All students read the same article, but at their own level. Then we can all talk about the article together because we've all read the same thing, even though it's with slightly different vocabulary. For a multi-level class, absolutely. You don't have to do the work. It's already done for you. Those are such great answers. And the good news is I have lots of great ideas about how we can use this in the classroom. Here are some of them. One is that we can use it for scaffolding, especially if we have what we consider low literacy learners who are going to feel very frustrated when they're asked to do a reading task. They may be very strong in oracy, that is reading and listening, but they just don't have the educational background in their native language to have those literacy skills yet. And so this is a heavily scaffolded resource that we can help get the students reading, even if they don't feel very strong in that particular skill. There's so many opportunities for differentiation. That is, if you have a mixed ability classroom where you have some who are very reluctant to read, and you have some that are very highly literate in their first language and in English, and you're trying to teach all of these people at the same time, there are so many opportunities for everyone studying the same article, but maybe reading it at different language levels. There's so many opportunities for integrating the 4 language domains, for self-selected reading, and even for family literacy. But we're at the end of our time today. And so I'm going to pass it back to Anne Marie so that we can finish up.
Thank you so much, Katie. I want to thank Krista for joining me today. All right, everybody, take care. Have a wonderful weekend, and we'll see you next time.
We hope you enjoyed this pre-recorded webinar. After you have passed the final test with a score of 80% or greater and have received your certificate of completion, please take a few moments to complete the course evaluation. Participant feedback helps Train PD at TCAL continue to provide high-quality professional development. To leave a course feedback, please go to the completed portion of your transcript. To do this, hover over the My Learning tab and select View Your Transcript. Click on the drop-down arrow next to the word Active and select Completed. Then, click Evaluate in the drop-down menu next to the course you just completed. Please note that your feedback is greatly appreciated.